Hello and welcome to this DroidScript tutorial, and today I'm going to talk to you about local persistent data. So how you can store information in your app so you can load it the next time you run your app. So here's an example I've already started here, and I just want to show you what I mean. So if we type in your name, or hello Bob, and press save, it shows you hello Bob. But if we stop the application and we rerun the application, there is no Bob stored. There's no information, no name, so we have to type it out. Now, one of the basic and easiest ways to save data locally is to write it to a file. And DroidScript allows us to do that very easily, and we can write large strings to the file. So let's just go ahead and do that, and I'll show you what I'm doing. I've already created a basic application here to implement what you've just seen. So we've got the text here, and then we have an input box which asks us for a name and a button for save, and when we press the button, it puts the name onto the end of the string and then hides the input and the button. So what we can do here is just extend this piece of code here to write to a file. So we can continue leaving the set text and the input, but what we can also do is we can write to a file. So if we do app.file, if you just type in file, you can see all of the options that you get. So you've got file exists, you can create a file, you can delete file, and we want to write a file. So there is an option there called write file, and it has, as you can see, the file, the text. If I move this out of the way, you'll see text, mode, encoding. And you can actually go here and you can see from here, you can read, and there you go. So actually what we'll just do is, why not just copy that, it's quicker. It's worth doing, just copy files. Right, so if we call it myfile.txt, this is the string that we want, so we actually want the text from the input string. So there is get text. So input is the text edit box, and get text is a method which will retrieve the contents. And we've got mode here for appending. We don't actually need that because we're just going to overwrite whatever's there, so we don't need that. And that is how we write the file. So what this is now going to do is write to the contents of our file called myfile.txt, the content of the input box, and we're also going to display it on the screen. So this is fine. Now we need to do something with that information when we reload the application. So what we could do here, we've got this create text hello. What we want to do is to actually append the information at the end of it if there is file exists. So we could, for a start, see if the file exists. So we could do this, app.file exists, give it a file name, myfile.txt, and we know now if that file exists, we're going to execute whatever is in here. Probably want to just comment. It's quite good to put comments in. Check if file exists. good practice to do that. If it is, let's create our text up here. We'll use add text because we want to add it straight to our layout instead of doing it later. And we're going to put space, and we're going to get the contents. So you can just do again file. Now we've got get file data, get file size, and there it is, read file. So read the contents of a local file. So there's it. So type that, and then we need the file name. So it's called myfile.txt. And that should be enough. Now if we end it with quotes there. And we need to then put an else afterwards, and we can just create the same thing, but just put hello, so we don't have the ending. Now we can do different ways to this, I know, but this is showing you what's possible and just one way of doing it. So then that creates the size, and this input, actually we don't want to show this or the button, for example, if we have entered it. So actually those items can go in here. Just remove that for now. So we're changing the thing, we don't need that anymore. Oops. Since we have it, we'll use it. We need to do that on both. The only reason I say this is little risky is obviously when you start putting things in conditions and variables in conditions, make sure you have to have the same one here because we're accessing it here. But this is only a small example, and there are other ways of doing this, but for now this will be fine. Right, now let's have a look at what we're doing. So when the file application loads, we're just doing a check on the file to see if it exists. If it does exist, then we can add a text to the screen with hello and then the contents of the file, and then followed by an exclamation mark. If the file does not exist, then we just add a straight hello, and we put the edit box and save button. And if the button does exist, when we press it for the first time, it should come up with the button, and when you press it, it writes to the file the contents of the input box. For now, we're just also setting it on there so you can see working. So let's see if this works. Okay, so we have hello as before, same as before, and now we press the save button, and now it's got hello Bob. But what the difference is now, we should see if we run this again, if it's worked. There we are. So now we have the persistent data stored locally. Now this was just a simple text string. As I say, you can store lots of different data in here. You could use JSON as well. If you want to do JSON, you can just sort of wrap it and then use the JSON parse and JSON stringify methods. So let me show you what I mean. So if we've got the JSON data, let's create a JSON object, and we're going to have name, and the name is going to be this. So that's our mini little JSON object. And we need to just run stringify for this because it needs to be a string. So here we can call it JSON data. Now there is mode on here. It might be actually. Let's have a look. Possibly get it from here again. There we go. Read file. Right file there. Append or ASCII. So, and you've got the encoding strings as well. So for now, what we need to do there, we can call it text. You can call it JSON. After all, it's going to be a text string anyway, text file. So what we have here is same sort of thing, but this time we've stringified a JSON string, a string object, and which we've given a attribute called name and the value. So now we can organize it in a JSON way, but we'll need to change then the opening bit. So we need to put that from myfile.text to myfile.json. And then what you need to do, you need to also, we need to just call it, so we need a JSON.parse, and we need to read this. So this now needs to be, so we're reading the file, which brings back the string, and then we're going to parse it into a JSON object. And then what we need to do to display it, so for this example it would be easier just to do the string straight off, but if you do this as a JSON thing, then you have a bit more of flexibility and complexity going forward. So if I now run this, it should show the text edit box because we don't have a file called myfile.json. And if we call this Peter, just to be different, so we know we're loading a different thing. So it says hello Peter now. So if I now press play, will it load up? Yeah, there we are. And so that is how to read and write to a JSON file now. And that's how to do local persistent data in your app. There are other options available, such as database. And you have these options here. So you could open and create a local database and then query it using it's an SQL based database, and you can then store a lot more information in there. Although in the files you can store a lot of data too, and it can be very quick as well accessing it. Just one more note to add: if you want to have persistent data across your applications, across more applications, and you want it to also persist if you delete an app, because at the moment if you delete an app this data will go, but you can persist it in the cloud, then you need to implement the cloud store persistence, which is available on, if you go on engine.io and you have the cloud. If you go use that, you can then persist data across applications. But for now, this is how you create local persistent data.